This video is about Mr. Thin. No, not that guy. This is about the late 1970s Panasonic product range, Mr. Thin. And if you're still none the wiser, I think it'll probably help if I show you one, whilst also reading the copy out from its magazine advert from 1977. Imagine a sleek, silver-coloured rectangle, 5 inches long, 2.5 inches wide, and only half an inch thick. It's thin enough to be a wallet, yet light enough to be a cigarette case. Feel its cool, simple elegance. Turn it on, and it sounds as elegant as it looks. It's Mr. Thin, our slimmest, trimmest radio ever. Yeah, it's a radio. This radio from Panasonic. This is the first of the Mr. Thin range. This is the RF015, although in the US it was just known as the Mr. Thin. You can see they've added that on the front here as a sticker. Now, at the time this was launched in 1977, just to put it in historical context, if you wanted to listen to music on the go on something that would fit in your pocket, that would be a transistor radio. The Walkman had yet to be launched. It would be a couple more years before that turned up, and then a couple more years before it became really popular. So at this point, listening to music on the go meant you carried around a pocket transistor radio. Now, of course, this product category was nothing new. Pocket transistor radios have been on the market since the mid-1950s. But this one was particularly neat and slim and stylish. Let's have a look at it. Now, I'd imagine that it's difficult for people who weren't around when this thing came out just how impressive a radio of this size would have seemed back in 1977. This really was very high tech. It looks to all intents and purposes like a pocket calculator. So to open this up and reveal that it's actually a radio would have blown some people's minds. Then again, pocket calculators, the one I had whilst this was out, was about twice as thick as this, with an LED display. But I just want to show you, if we take it out of the case here, it's held in place. It's got a little press-stud type mechanism at the back, which corresponds with that hole on there. So it's also held in at the bottom with this bit of plastic. So if we just take that out of the way, you'll see the speaker grill part of this is metal and around onto the back as well. The top half though, that's plastic coloured in a silver sheen to match the rest of it. The speaker in this had to be specially designed. There wasn't a speaker that was this thin, so Panasonic had to come out with a new thinner speaker. It's powered by 2 AAAs. Now, I was wondering how much earlier than when this hit the market were AAAs on the market, or at least popular. And it turns out that AAAs date all the way back to 1911, much earlier than I thought. Now the tuning dial here, that isn't so good. You can see here, it's a bit of a funny design. I've got to get it quite close to the camera so you can read the digits here. So it's just a wheel, it's turning 2 things at the same time, or rather one large wheel perhaps, that's showing up in the AM at the bottom and the FM at the top. And it's only a couple of turns to get from one end to the other. That's right at the bottom, and that's right at the top there, 88 to 108. So it's very fine tuning, but it does feel nice. It's a metal wheel again, so it's easy to get into the right position, and it stays there as well. It's well dampened. We've got the FM AM dial on here. We've got an earphone socket on the top, just a single ear. It's not a stereo output. And to turn it on, it's your standard thing. You've got an off on the volume, so click it past there and you get into the volume control. And we'll just pull out the antenna here to get a bit of better reception. And you'll see we've got the angle on there as well once it's all the way out. But yeah, we're not going to pick up anything particularly great at the moment because I've got some LED lights on here which do interfere with the signal. With those turned off, you get a much better signal. Yeah, you might be able to tell from that the sound is as thin as the radio. I mean, you can hear it. It'd probably be better for listening to spoken word than music, though. Of course, there's no bass to speak of. It's all treble, but it's working fine. I mean, it's got some age-related issues, I'm sure, as well, but I don't think it would sound too much different when it was new. So there you go. That is the original Mr. Thin radio, the RF015. Not much more I can say about it. I mean, it is an AM/FM radio, and it operates pretty much exactly as you'd expect. I think the biggest downside is this tuning dial and the very fine tuning to get to the different stations. It's a little bit fiddly to tune in, and it's difficult to see what frequency you're at. But yeah, room for improvement. Now, from what I've read, this cost $50 in 1977. I have no idea what it cost in the UK in pounds. I do know for a fact I would never have seen one in a shop. At that point, I was only able to go to my local town, which was in the middle of Lancashire, and their Rumbelows would certainly not have stocked one of these. So devices that were this cool, this futuristic looking at the time, were kind of mythical items for me. You might see them perhaps in a Sunday magazine advert, but more likely this kind of thing I'd picture being something that perhaps James Bond would pull out of a jacket pocket, a dinner suit jacket pocket, and it would have some kind of special feature on it. Yeah, now while I automatically associate small electronic gadgets with James Bond, perhaps I was watching too much television as a child, I wouldn't have thought in real life that a proper undercover operative would be carrying around an off-the-shelf, store-bought radio as part of their surveillance equipment. But I would have been wrong, because that's where an interesting connection between one of these radios and the CIA comes in. Just picture the scene. It's Poland in the late 1970s, a communist-ruled country. We're in the middle of the Cold War, and there's a lot of spying going on both sides. A gentleman called Peter Burke was working in the American embassy in Warsaw. The Polish security services suspected that Mr. Burke was actually working for the CIA, which was apparently very good intel, because that's exactly what he was doing. As a result of their suspicions, they had him under surveillance, and on the 18th of November 1979, they apprehended him whilst he was picking up a dead drop that was located inside a hollowed out stone. On Mr. Burke's person were a number of items, one of which was a Panasonic Mr. Thin RF015. Now, in order to understand the importance of this radio, you need to be aware that Polish radio receivers that were available in the country at this point picked up the OIRT FM band, which was between 65.8 and 74 megahertz. Any radio that picked up frequencies beyond this was strictly prohibited. Now, Burke's Mr. Thin radio, like any store-bought FM radio receiver from the US, would pick up the range of 88 to 108 megahertz, which of course is above the range of the Polish OIRT official FM broadcast, so it can't pick any of those up. But what it can pick up are the security radios, the chatter between the security services. They spoke on the range between 100 and 108 megahertz. Therefore, if you were suspicious that you were the subject of some kind of surveillance operation and you wanted to know if people were talking about you, perhaps there was a van parked outside your apartment that looked a bit suspicious, well, tune your radio into these frequencies and you'll hear if there's any radio communication going on talking about your comings and goings. Now, of course, if you were apprehended in that situation and accused of being a spy, you'd try and come up with an excuse, perhaps like, oh no, I just brought this from home. This was a radio that I brought with me. I didn't realise it'd get the wrong FM reception range, so I'll be listening to AM all this time just to pick up the local radio broadcasts. Yeah, that might be an excuse, except at the time the radio was confiscated off Burke, it was switched into the FM position and the tuning dial was taped into the position for picking up those security service broadcasts. Now, of course, this would all be a fun little story without any evidence to go along with it. But fortunately, at the time, the Polish security service recorded this whole operation as part of some kind of training film, and that whole video is now available on YouTube, and you can see Burke's Mr. Thin very clearly displayed in that video. Now, I've got to thank the Crypto Museum for linking to this. I found it through their website, excellent website by the way, so I'm going to put a link to that video and to the Crypto Museum in the video description. Okay, so that's the original RF015 Mr. Thin from 1977 covered. Let's move on to 1978 because Panasonic didn't stand still. They introduced a new model in 78, the RF016, and this time it could tell the time. Yeah, this was a pocket alarm clock radio. Now, in 1978, alarm clock radios were the hot tech item of the moment. They were relatively affordable, so most people would either have one or perhaps want one. I mean, everyone that I knew in the house, you'd find a alarm clock radio, but the idea of having a pocket travel alarm clock radio, now that was another thing entirely. In fact, just even the idea of having a LCD timepiece was still pretty impressive in 1978. And just to show you how Panasonic's offering compared to the other more typical devices of the time, here's the range of pocket radios and radio alarm clocks that were featured in the winter 1978 Argos catalogue. Now this should help you understand just how impressively small and stylish the Panasonic Mr. Thin was in comparison. Now incidentally, while grabbing these images from the RetroMash website, I spotted the exact radio alarm clock that I had in 1978. I hadn't seen this thing for decades. I've got no idea what happened to mine, but here it is towards the top right, the white boomerang shaped thing. Now seeing this again brought back a flood of memories of listening to radio comedies late at night on a school day when I should have been asleep. But I do also have really faint memories from that time of seeing this in Sunday magazine supplements and really wanting one of these things. Well, I've got one now. Let's have a look at it. This is the RF016, and again with this one I've got some magazine ad copy to read alongside it. Imagine a sleek, elegantly thin electronic marvel, stylishly slim at just under 3/4 of an inch, perfectly proportioned at just 2 3/4 inches wide and 5.5 inches high, and superbly light at less than 6.5 ounces. It has a glimmering burnished look, somewhere between silver and chrome in colour, all snug in a handsome carrying case. Yet even more astonishing than its cool, simple elegance is what it is: an FM/AM clock radio, the slimmest, trimmest clock radio ever made. This is roughly the same size as the original. Apparently, according to the specs, it is a little bit thicker, but you wouldn't really notice it. It does incorporate, of course, the clock now, which can be seen through the front of the case. The case is pretty much the same as the previous one. We've got the same system here of it sliding in at the bottom and also clipping in at the top there. And the same on the radio as before. Metal at the bottom, plastic at the top, runs on 2 AAAs again. This time though, we've also got another battery for the clock. That goes in there, little button cell. Same kind of antenna that pulls out and can be twisted. But a few other changes on here. First off, the volume control no longer switches it on. Due to the fact that this is a clock radio, that can't be switched off because then your radio wouldn't turn on. So instead, you've got a selector up here for the radio on, off and the alarm. So if we turn it on, that's just the radio on now. I'll just extend the antenna a bit. Roughly the same sound quality as before. It's got the same tuning dial system there, which is difficult to read. We can choose between waking up to the alarm or the radio. Well, I say or on mine. I don't know if it's supposed to do this, but if you put it into the chirp, which would just be the beep I would have expected, it actually plays the alarm as well as the radio. You can see we've got time, sec and alarm. Obviously alarm would show us what time the alarm was set for. So if I flip that, you can see we've got it set to 8:30. But if we go to seconds, you'll see we've got the seconds counting up on the right with a 3. That's the last digit of the time. If we move to the time, you can see it's 9:03. So we've got 9:03 and then move across to the seconds, 9:03 and 46 seconds. And again, just like before, FM AM radio, you want to set the time, you press these buttons in here with a pen or similar pointy objects. Same if you want to set the alarm. And up here, if you want to wake up to the alarm, move it into the alarm position like that, and then it will wake up to the beep or the alarm. And of course, we've got a light on here, which is just in the corner there. And we've got the earphone as well for a single output. So yeah, pretty much the same device as the other one really, just with the addition of the clock. But yeah, there you go. That is the RF016. And again, it probably would have had a Mr. Thin sticker at one point in time. Okay, so just to go back to the beginning, 1977, the original Mr. Thin AM/FM radio. 1978, added in a clock and alarm features as well. 1979, more additions. This time they've changed the colour scheme as well. Now this one isn't in as good a condition as the other two that I've got. Doesn't come with the case. However, I've got one here. This is it. It is the RF079, and in 1979 they added in a calculator. Let's take a look at this one as well. Right, now this one's a bit of a departure because we've changed the colour scheme. We've gone into the JPS golden black. And we've got a metal face on the front here, plastic body on the back. If we go into the battery compartment, you can see we've got our two AAAs there, but our button cell is hidden behind this little bit here. Now, I haven't got the case for this, but you can see it would have used a similar system to the other ones. I've got the little Preston type receiver there. I just haven't got the case that would locate into that. On the side here, the band, AM, FM, volume, and on the front, quite a lot of buttons. I mean, we've got a calculator, so we have plenty of buttons for that, but it also has more besides. Setting the clock and the alarm is confusing, and I'm someone who can normally do those things really easily. You have to kind of put it into a certain mode, you have to get it into the adjust mode here, and then you have to move it into the appropriate clock mode. Then there's this thing that kind of resets it, that clears it. You type in the time. You've got an all reset button here. Very odd controls on this one, not intuitive. Anyway, but the usual thing, earphone. We've got the button at the top here, auto on or off, which of course auto would mean that the alarm would set this thing off, and the tuning dial at the top. The antenna on this one, same idea again, just pulls out of the top there. It's just a bit of a thicker device all round. If we just turn this one on, hopefully you'll be able to hear that the sound quality is the same as the other ones. It is a little bit flaky, this one. It comes and goes as to whether it wants to work. At the moment it's not working, so just give me a sec.
What's she wearing? A cashmere jumper? With a designer bag and bag boots.
Now you might notice I'm having more luck tuning this one in, and that's because we've got the more familiar tuning dial window on here with the needle that travels up the large display here. So it just makes it a lot easier and more accurate to tune a particular radio station, and a lot easier to see which one you tuned into as well. So that is an improvement over the previous ones. The sound quality isn't really an improvement, it sounds much the same, but it does operate better as a radio just due to the fact it's far easier to tune in. So there you go, that is the RF079. So a complete redesign really, not particularly to my taste. I much prefer the more elegant style of the other devices. Now you might have noticed with this one that Mr. Thin isn't quite as thin as he once was. He's put on a little bit of weight due to the addition of that calculator. So if you weren't interested in the calculator or the clock, you just wanted a really slim pocket radio again, just like the original, well, that option was available. And this is the last Mr. Thin I've got to show you. This is the RF033. It's in the same colour scheme as the calculator model. It comes with a case, this one. And this is just back to your basic AM, FM radio. Let's just have a quick look at this one. Now, I acquired this from a chap in Portugal, and you'll notice there that it should say National Panasonic. It says it on the bottom of the device itself there as well. And the US models that I've been showing all just stated Panasonic as the manufacturer. So either this was for the Portuguese market or perhaps somebody's imported it from somewhere else. But it's got the full frequency range and it doesn't go down to 76. So it doesn't look like something that was designed for Japan. But you'll see it's a very different design to the other ones. If we just take this out of the case, you'll see, of course, I've got the case here, and we've got a different kind of mechanism for holding this one in here. A couple of little latches at the back there that hold it in place. And if we slide this to one side, you'll see this takes 3 AAAs now. And if we just clip that back in, I'll show you that it's a rather plain looking object, but it does have a couple of different features on here. If we just turn the power on, which is the button in the middle there, you'll see we've got an LED on the top here, and that's a tuning LED, and it will light up, but I think I need to get a better signal. And you'll notice here the antenna doesn't go inside it, it's clipped on the outside, so just clip that round. There we go, we've got our tuning light on there now, and we've got the full frequency display here again. Not the easiest thing to see where that needle is though. I don't know if you can see it. It's very thin. They could have done with making that a little bit more obvious. But yeah, this LED tuning is listed as a big feature on this one. Yeah, nice little radio, I suppose. The sound quality, pretty much the same as the calculator one. I'd imagine it's got the same size of speaker in there. But I think it looks a little bit weird with that big FM AM switch in the middle. By the way, just want to mention, whenever I feature a radio, there'll be a lot of people in the US say, why don't I test AM? And the answer is because I can pick up absolutely nothing on AM where I am. Well, I can pick up like a really kind of fuzzy, bad quality signal. Let's just see, we'll pop it on AM and see what we can get on this. Yeah. Nothing I want to listen to there. Okay, so that's why I don't bother with AM where I am, and never will, because it's not going to get any better than that. Right, there you go. And that is the most recent model in my range of Panasonic Mr. Thin radios. Of course, over time they dropped the Mr. Thin name. They did carry on making pocket radios. The RF067 is a particularly nice example from later on that I don't have. I don't know whether it was sold under the Mr. Thin name, but it went back to that silver colour, which I prefer from the earlier models. I like these because they mark a particular moment in time, a time that's been and gone, a time when you could sell a pocket radio as a premium device. You could put out a full page advert in a magazine just featuring a radio, and a radio that sold for the equivalent nowadays of $500 or £375. I mean, it's a completely different time. Of course, since then, radios became kind of commodity devices. Nobody really cared about them. They cost a few pounds, but it's not something you'd really lust after. Not like these things. But it got me thinking, I wonder if Panasonic is still selling pocket radios nowadays, AM/FM radios. So I had a look on the website, and I was happy to see that they were. So I bought one. This is the RFP50. I think it's like the end of the line. I can't imagine them making any models after this one. I don't know how long this one's going to carry on for, but at the time I bought this, it cost me £23. And I just thought it'd be interesting to have a look at what you get nowadays from a Panasonic FM/AM radio and how it compares to that very first model, which cost a heck of a lot more to buy back in the day. Okay, now before I get it out of the box, just a couple of its headline features. It's a digital tuning system. It is, of course, an analog needle, but it uses an electronic digital tuning system, so it's not like an analog radio as such. It's got a hand strap, a fluorescent pointer and glowing dial panel. Well, okay, we'll look at that in a second. But I noticed down at the bottom here, picture simulated. Now, they normally say that for a television. I don't know what picture they're referring to, but let's get in here and see exactly what you get nowadays when you buy the latest pocket Panasonic radio. Well, you get the usual big selection of things that you don't want to read. much like the other ones, we've got a metal front on this, but it is of course just a thin cover over it, but it gives a nice feel to the device. Of course, we're no longer in the Mr. Thin territory with this one. That is still a mono earphone output though, rather than a stereo headphone one. Like the most recent of the other ones I've shown, this one has its antenna on the outside. That design hasn't really changed. This is quite well strengthened though here. So this one takes two AA's. We're back to the AA's now, so let me just pop a couple of those in here. Right, so we go right back to the beginning again with the control method, the old volume switch which has an off position at the bottom, the one that we're perhaps most familiar with. So if we just turn that up and tune this in. We've got a tuning light here which was featured on the most recent of those Mr. Thin models. And actually, I think I was picking something up on AM for a second there. Let's just have a look. Yeah, there we go. Not particularly good, but that's unusual to pick something up on AM. Let's move it to FM though. And we should get a much better, stronger signal on a much wider group of stations here. And yeah, I'm just picking one thing up after another as I move this needle. And again, it doesn't sound bassy as you'd expect, but it does sound a lot better. Yeah, far easier to pick things up on this one. But as far as that display goes, well, obviously you're not going to be able to see that in here with any lights on. So let me just turn those off for the moment. Okay, so I've turned off as many lights as I can in the room while still having some illumination so you can see what I'm doing. And that display doesn't look particularly luminescent at the moment. Let's just put a light on it though. Okay, so that's our tuning display illuminated, and whilst it looks quite impressive at the moment and would enable you to tune your radio in the dark very easily, it won't be more than a couple of minutes before this fades away again and becomes completely useless. But of course it isn't difficult to tune a radio in the dark, especially one with a tuning light like this. You just play around until you get the thing tuned in. I mean, you know that that is at one end because the thing won't go any further. That's at the other end. So if you want to tune something at this end, go up to there, move your way down till your light comes on, and then you know you've got the station you want or something very close to it. Now, one thing I do like about this, we've got this little green square here. If we turn it off, that changes to black because it's just a piece of plastic that goes behind the window here. So you'll be able to tell that this was still switched on even if that light was off because you can see the green square on there. So they've thought this through, they know what they're doing. It's not a patch on those old devices as far as style goes, but the sound quality is better, it's easier to tune in, it picks more up, and it costs a heck of a lot less as well. So there you go, that was a look at my collection of Mr. Thin pocket radios. Now, this is just a selection from the product range over the years. There were plenty more models besides, but I think these are some of the more significant ones in the range. Now, if you do fancy getting hold of your own Mr. Thin radio, bear a couple of things in mind. First, the quality of the audio from these isn't really a patch on a modern radio. In addition, they're going to have worn components. They might not pick up a stronger signal as a modern radio. And also, the very earliest models do fetch really rather silly collector's prices, especially in mint condition. Then again, you might get lucky and just find one offered very cheaply on the shelf in a charity shop. But from the very earliest days when I saw a picture of one of these, I thought they looked like the kind of thing that a spy would carry around. But I never for a moment imagined that they really were. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.